Welcome to the Resilient Mindset Podcast, an exciting new podcast by Resilience Queen, Justine Martin. Justine is the owner and founder of the Resilient Mindset, a division of the Justine Martin Corporation. Justine draws on her years of experience and knowledge consulting with clients to develop and sustain a positive mindset. Focused on igniting your passion, purpose and power, follow the Resilience Queen each week as she delves into the mind of her guests, exploring fascinating stories and inspiring journeys.
Leveraging 2 master's degrees, sports psychology and early childhood development, and 30 years of professional coaching experience, Coach Reid Maltbie has dedicated his life to creating the very best environments for achieving peak performance. He's providing training programs to various sporting organisations, including the Gaelic Games Association, US Sailing, Soccer Canada, and the USOC and the PGA of Canada. A former Division 1 athlete, he shared his experiences in his 2015 TEDx talk, Echoes Beyond the Game. Additionally, he has contributed educational content to hundreds of media outlets such as the Huffington Post, NBC Sports Engine, ESPN Radio, and Sirius XM-FC. His book, The Spartan Mindset, due out in April 2023, focuses significantly on the impact on language performance. It's a must-read for anyone who strives to be more effective and supportive communicator in the sporting world and beyond. Welcome back, everyone, to the Resilience Mindset Podcast. Today I've got with me Coach Reid. How are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you doing today?
Yeah, good, thank you. Okay, let's get straight into it. What does resilience mean to you?
What does resilience mean to me? Well, obviously, it's that bounce back, right? When you have a failure, you hit an obstacle, the ability to get back up again. You fall down, you get back up. But I think there's also some pieces of the puzzle there, like it's not just getting up, but sometimes it's adapting, it's overcoming. So you might come across an obstacle in your life or an adversity, and you have to learn how to adapt to that adversity and overcome that opportunity. So it might not be bouncing back, it might just be bending without breaking. So that's another big piece for me for resilience. And then there's also, for me, and as I write about in my book, there's a lot about stamina or endurance. Sometimes resilience is just being able to withstand a really tough time and knowing that the tough time you're going through is going to make it so much better when you do get out the other side and you succeed. You know, how can you experience success if you don't know what it is like to actually fail?
There, I love that. It's a fantastic definition of it. So what's an adversity that you've actually faced and how did you draw on your resilience to cope?
Oh, there are so many.
Everyone normally says that. You don't get to our age without having quite a few.
But, like I said, if you haven't failed, you don't understand what it's like to succeed. But I would say one recent is I had back issues. So after all the years of sport, all of the years of doing things, my back started to go into spasm a couple times a year. I was living with chronic pain every day. I was traveling a lot, giving talks, and being put in a metal tube at pressure and sleeping on hotel beds. And just, there were days I could barely walk. And I kept saying to my sons, they were at that age where they're hitting the teenage years and they wanted to do more. And I kept using that awful word can't. And in our house, can't is an acronym. It's challenge accepted, no takebacks. And my son finally said to me, he said, hey, you talk a lot about the Spartan mindset. He said, let's work on that together. He wanted me to lift with him. And I said, oh, son, I haven't lifted in 2 decades and my lower back. And so we decided to apply some of the methodologies that I talk about in Spartan Mindset. We decided to apply some of the stuff he's working on because he wants to be a bodybuilder and strength coach. And he got me back into lifting. And so, again, I learned where to adapt. So there's certain lifts I don't do. I listen to my body. So there's certain things that some days I'm off. I don't do it. But I also learned how to work through it. And so creating better stabilizers and working on my core muscles, that it was a huge adversity moment for me to bounce back and see the resilience of, hey, I can lift again. And I'm lifting weights that I didn't even lift when I was in my 20s, all because my son challenged me to try to apply some of my own resilience.
And has that helped with your back?
Tons. I feel much more healthy. Yeah. I'm living with a lot less chronic pain. I can lift things again. I can get through my daily life without feeling like I'm hindered by my back. I don't feel like I'm almost 50.
Yeah, yeah. I can totally relate to that. I've been weightlifting since 2001. I suppose it was before it was fashionable for women to walk into a gym and pick up heavy things. Let's just say that. And I competed nationally in Australian tug of war,
Awesome.
and yeah, so you imagine what that did to the body. I actually broke a couple of vertebrae in between my shoulder blades, and I remember doing it. Didn't remember that I actually had broken it until quite recently. I've had MRIs for the MS that I have, and it came up on one of the MRIs that I'd, in the past cracked a couple of those vertebrates, and I had to stop and think, oh, how did I do that? And it would have been through tug of war. But I went on to, I went on to lift weights and compete in all-round weightlifting, powerlifting, and then Olympic weightlifting as someone who has MS. So that was quite rare, actually, to start a sport when you're known as being disabled. Last year I competed in 2 strongman events, and I still go to the gym 3 days a week without fail because it does make you feel better. And, I don't want to be one of these people that fall down in older life on the carpet or on the floor and don't have enough strength to actually pull myself back up again and, get pneumonia or break a hip or whatever it is. It's, extremely important to weight train regularly, no matter what age you are.
Yeah.
That if you don't use it, you'll lose it. Is very, very true in muscle mass. And we're a soft society now. We have so many modern things that keep us soft. Remotes. Walk around your house and see how many remote controls that you actually have in it. And I think I counted 15 in my home. So, the remote control for the garage, the TV, the stereo. I can turn my air conditioner on with my phone. Just the fact that we've got air conditioning. All of those things are making us soft. So, well done to you and to your son for encouraging you to get back in and lift weights. And, just even lifting weights is a resilience thing because you'll get stuck on a weight for a period of time. And you can't lift anything heavier than that, not even 1 kilo heavier than that. And then all of a sudden you'll push through that and you might put another 5 kilos on your PB. And so it's about going in, being consistent and looking for your dreams.
Definitely.
So, yeah, what has been your biggest failure to date and what techniques did you use to get back up?
Oh, my biggest failure would probably be in 2019. I was working in the youth sports realm, and of course, with the pandemic, things started. The bottom fell out, and I had been working with a particular business partner, and we parted ways. And a lot of my work ended up being adapted. So I lost a lot of my work. I lost a lot of my momentum, and then the pandemic shut down any of my clients that I had, any talks that I was doing, and so it looked like that dream was over. I decided not to fight it, not to let it eat me alive. So I left it, went into working with homeless youth here in San Diego. And then in recent months, my book was picked up by a publisher. And so we decided to make another run at it. I got picked up. I moved over to the Intercollegiate Sailing Association, working with sailing teams. So I'm back in the sports realm. And the biggest thing that I did was, one, I had to let go of any feelings of failure. I couldn't allow it to be permanent. So I couldn't blame myself for what happened. I couldn't blame others for what happened. I carried there were some grudges I was carrying because I knew that it wasn't just me, my failure it ultimately comes down to me, but there were other forces at play, and I had to let those go. And I had to realize that the only person that suffers when you live a life with grudges, or when you live a life with anger towards somebody, or seeking revenge, or whatever that is, the only person that suffers is you. And forgiveness is the same thing. Forgiveness is for you. So I had to go ahead and forgive myself, and I had to forgive the landscape and say, that's just how it is. Youth sports, we see what happened with the U.S. team and the parents and Gio Reyna. We see it at all levels of youth sports. So there are always going to be people who just do things to benefit themselves. And you're going to suffer in the process. So I can either be angry at what happened, or I can let it go, forgive myself, forgive them, and come back. And that's what I did. And there were a lot of long conversations with my wife about how much of a failure I was. The dream is over. It's, did I ever even have any kind of impact when I was there? And when the book got picked up, my wife said, see, it's not over. Your dream was never about youth sports. Your dream was about helping people find everyday excellence. Your dream was about developing leaders who transform lives. And she said, so you either choose to chase that dream or you choose to let it go. But either way, if you let it go, don't look at it as a permanent failure. As John Wooden used to say, failure is not fatal unless you make it fatal. So the resilience was all about switching my mindset over and really thinking about what mattered most. Did it matter what happened in 2019, or does it matter what's going to happen in 2024 when I can get back out there and start working with people again and start helping transform lives?
And, I look at it as you can forgive, but you don't have to forget.
Agreed.
And there's a difference there. I've had some horrible things done to me, and I forgive, but I don't forget. And that's so I can move on and, not have all that anger in me all the time, and be happy at where I am in life. But it doesn't mean that I've forgotten about those incidents. It just means that I needed to move forward.
Yes.
So who are your role models in resilience?
My biggest one right now is my daughter. She's 23 years old. She was just diagnosed in her 20s with a rare disease. It's not that rare, but a lot of doctors didn't understand it. So they didn't know what was wrong with her. She was having seizures. She was having blackouts. She was having muscular issues, heart issues. Ends up she has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, EDS. And because of it, there are comorbidities. Like she now has POTS. She's got joint issues, so her joints fall out really easily. She'll pop a hip out or a knee out really easily. She has to get transfusions. She still has seizures. This is a girl who my wife says all the time. She says, "What were you doing when you were 23?" I was a ski bum, skiing with my friends and going partying. And here's my daughter who, for all intents and purposes, it feels like her 20s are over, and she's living like she's 60 or 70, and she's having to think about long-term care, and she's having to think about going to the doctor on a weekly basis, and she's got a service dog, and yet she has this beautiful sunny outlook. Like everything to her is just a challenge, and it's a beautiful challenge. It's a healthy challenge that she wants to take on, and everything for her is an opportunity at experiencing the world, in a much more joyful way than a lot of us do. A lot of us go through life because we have a privilege, or we're healthy or whatever it is, and we sort of forget about the joy of everyday life. And she lives with that joy, and she's got this very strong drive to not let it affect her, and more importantly, to not let people see her as disabled. She's super abled, or she's just as able as anybody else. She just has, like I had a bad back, she's got her issues, and so she does a very good job of shifting that conversation away from, there's nothing wrong with me, it's just this is what I have to deal with, and I can either accept it and live life and adapt through it, or I can let it take me down and make it a fatal situation for my confidence. And I love her for it. So she's my biggest resilience mentor.
Oh, what a beautiful story there. But so sorry about your daughter's health issues. I can relate with everything that you're saying there. Every day is a battle for myself as well. And I look for the positivity around me all the time and surround myself with positivity. And you sound like a very good role model for her as well. And one of my sayings is, we don't give up. I don't give up. I just modify. And if there's something I can't do and, my health, doesn't allow me to do it, then I modify it. And if I have a big day out one day, the next couple of days I know they're going to be quieter. And, quieter to me just means I'm going to be on the lounge doing work.
Yeah.
I'm always
she's like that too. She'll pace herself. She'll have a huge day. They'll go to SeaWorld, or they'll go to a park or something. And the next day she's at home resting. And she says, I measure my days. You remind me of a saying.
Yeah, that's right.
And I'm sorry to they're nearby, but they are in the rugby world, and their competitors. New Zealand All Blacks have a saying that they didn't lose the game, they ran out of time. And that's sort of that mindset. Like I'm not, it's
that's so
I'm modifying.
true.
I didn't quite lose this game. We're just, just ran out a little bit of time. I'll try again tomorrow.
Yeah, no, I like that one. So, Red, what are some of your passions in life?
Two biggest passions that I'm back into is one is developing leaders who transform lives. I really believe that if we put a little bit of time and intentionality into the people around us who are leaders of others, and that includes myself, it's growing every day, that we can actually create leadership models where we can transform lives. And from a sense of, like, for youth sports, if you're working with a team of 15 kids, yeah, you've got your one or two all-stars. But as a leader, what are you doing for the other, 12, 14 or 13 kids to help them get better? Because they're going to go on and succeed at something. It may not be sports. So our job as leaders is to help everybody find their own everyday excellence. What is it that drives them? What is their gift to the world, and help them have the mindset and the value system to be able to chase down that dream. The other one is, again, it's about everyday excellence. I really feel like there are a lot of people who don't want to lean into their maximum potential because they're so afraid of failure. They're so afraid of trying, or there is this fear of success. Wow, if I accomplish this, then what do I do next with this? And so I'm big on everyday excellence, that everybody has something that they're striving for every day. These everyday competitors, whether it's a top salesperson, whether it's being the best teacher in the school, whether it's lifting, winning a strongman competition. And there's an opportunity to work with these people to help them understand how they speak to themselves and how they structure their mindset can go a long way with helping them achieve even more towards their maximum potential and achieving that everyday excellence. And that's what I talk about a lot, is that mindset. The words we use really matter. Every word matters. So those are my two big passions.
It does, and every word matters on what we say to ourselves.
Very much so.
Like, I coach people, and, if you wouldn't say that to someone else, why are you saying it to yourself?
Yes.
And, people stop and think, what? And then it's like, okay, you start being nice and kind to yourself and big things happen.
Yes.
So how do you deal with the setbacks in your life?
So I saw this amazing quote from Tu Lam, who is he was a former special operations, and he now owns a company called Ronin Tactics. And I came across some interviews with him by the Mulligan brothers. They do a lot of those interviews on TikTok where they're talking to monks, and they're talking about personal development. And he said, how can you, I'm not going to get the quote quite right because it's a phenomenal quote, but look him up. He said, how can you ever live the life you want unless you're willing to live the life that you don't want? Or in other words, how can you ever know what it's like to have courage if you've never felt fear? How can you know what it's like to like I said earlier, to succeed if you've never felt failure? And that's a good way to look at adversity. Is adversity is an opportunity to learn. It's the world presenting you with a healthy challenge. It's a puzzle to solve. And so you have two choices. You can use that puzzle to say, I'm just not good enough, and walk away from it. Or you can use that puzzle to say, hey, here's an opportunity to learn. I might get better at this particular task. I might learn a different way around. Like you said, I might be able to modify it. I might be able to climb it. I might be able to go around it. I might be able to chisel through it, but I'll find a solution. And so adversity, that's all it is it's a teacher for us. It's another opportunity for us to learn how to be better people, or to learn skills that we didn't have, so that we can get to the other side. And again, if it's a setback that is scary, you will never know what it's like to feel courage until you are afraid. And so fear is a motivator. It's a fuel for you figuring out how to mitigate that fear, how to manage it, how to understand how you can use it to your advantage. Fear is a great thing to use to your advantage. Fear is warning us that there's danger. But then again, how do I learn to use that fear to get to the other side so that I can use it to create more courage for myself in the future? Facing your fears sometimes is the best way.
Oh, look, I get that. Yeah, I get that. When I had lymphoma and leukemia and when I was going through chemo in 2017, I lost the ability to hold a paintbrush and a pen. So I couldn't draw, I couldn't paint, I couldn't create, I couldn't go to my happy place. And then I kept getting tagged in all these posts of a artist, look her up, Iris Scott. And she was finger painting with oils. And I thought, I wonder if I could finger paint with acrylics. I thought, I'll give it a crack. And I did, and I created, and I sold that piece for $400. And I'm like, I can still go there. I can still do it. I've modified, but it doesn't matter. And from that, I still finger paint. I've got the use of my fingers back now. I still put an element of finger painting in my work, and I teach finger painting for grown-up classes now, and do mobile and go and help people, celebrate their birthdays, and they get to finger paint on their adults get to finger paint on their birthdays. So, yeah, out of, adversity, good things do happen. And I've got a broken arm. I had surgery 6 weeks ago, and I'm like, right, what am I going to do in the next 6 weeks when I can't create, conventional art and can't do anything with it? But I know I'm going to learn how to do digital art. So I've been learning how to do digital art over the last 6 weeks. So when I can paint and draw again, I'm all set to go. So, and that's something I've been wanting to do for quite a long time. So this opportunity of, some would see it as a setback, but no, I see it as an opportunity to move forward and learning new things. And I'm writing my solo book, because I've co-authored 4 books last year, but this is my solo book, and I've been able to put a lot of extra time into it, typing with one hand, again, modifying, doing voice texting to do it as well. So where there's a will, there's a way.
That's fantastic.
So moving on, I was going to ask you what's a quote that you live by, but you've already given us some bombs in there. Have you got any more? Any more, Reid?
My goodness.
You can pick out?
There's one that I do live by. I'm having a total brain cramp right now on the author. It'll come to me, but it's easier to build children than it is to fix broken men. And it's the idea that, yeah.
Love that.
I'm totally brain cramping. But it's the idea that when we're working with younger people, it's so much easier to build them up than it is to be that abusive or demeaning person who 25 years from now, somebody else is having to fix them because of what we've done to them as a leader. And so it's one I really live by, and it's one I point out a lot of times to people, that it's so much easier to build children than it is to fix broken men.
Yeah, totally agree on that. How do you cope with pressure?
I think pressure is part of the recipe. We have to understand that we're going to face pressure. And pressure can actually, again, it can be a great honer. It can be a great narrower of focus. It can, if we use pressure in the way that allows us to really narrow our focus and become very disciplined in what we're trying to accomplish, it helps us get better. The problem is keeping that. So Dan Siegel talks about the brain in the palm of the hand, and if this is the prefrontal cortex and all the logic and rational and everything underneath there where the thumb is, that's sort of like the amygdala, the fear center. And so he talks about the fact that we need to keep this part of the brain in charge at all times. And that's how I think about pressure. Is I have 2 choices. I can let the pressure cause me to flip my top, and now my fear center is in charge. So it's fight, flight, or freeze. Or I can allow that pressure to focus my thinking, to focus my mindset, so that this part of the brain, the logic center, is working the most. And that means I can solve the problems better, or I can come out the other side better if I allow that blue head mentality instead of allowing the lid to flip. So that's pressure for me, is something that helps you narrow your focus.
Does, most definitely. I will always work better under pressure. I work better with a deadline that I'm trying to do, rather than the worst thing you can tell an artist is take your time. There's no rush. No. Please don't tell me that. Give me a date. I just need a deadline to work towards, because I'm telling you now, you tell me that, it's never going to get done.
It's funny you say that, because my solo book that's coming out, I wrote it in 2017, and it sat for 5 years until the publisher picked it up and said, you have until X date to get all the edits done and get it submitted. And it was like, wow, now I have a deadline. That thing stopped sitting and stopped collecting dust.
Yeah, that's right. What are you doing to practice self-care and personal wellness?
Well, one, you talked about it earlier. It's a grace. You have to be grace. You have to have grace for yourself. There has to be that personal kindness. So I'm being a lot nicer to myself in my mindset and my thinking, and as well as how I treat myself. Even with the lifting with my son and some of the other things we're doing, I don't beat myself up if I have a night where I go out and I splurge and have a big dinner. And there's 1 or 2 ways I can do it. I can. Yeah, I have to have that, because if we don't ever have that, then we just go nuts. The other piece of the self-care is
Yeah.
understanding my body now and what I'm capable of doing with my back issues. And so doing those things that make me feel good, that help heal my back. So the things that are deal breakers for me is I don't skip lifts with my son. I don't skip the time I get to spend with my daughter. I don't skip out on the times I get to spend with my wife or my other son. So those are things that matter to me. Those are the deal breakers, is spending time with family. It's
Yeah.
making healthy choices when I can. So that is self-care for me. And then there's a big piece of it is I work remote. So there are times where I just shut the world out and I take care of myself, whether it's going to a coffee shop and working a little bit with headphones in and
Mm.
noise canceling headphones, whether it's going and meditating, but whatever it is, when my body screams for, and I can feel it, you can feel the waters rise up to your eyeballs and it's one of those days. That's when I exercise self-care the most. Do I need to meditate? Great. Do I need to put Brain FM on and listen to some relaxing sounds? Great. I'll do that. Do I need to go to a coffee shop and write for a few minutes to detox? I'll do that. Is it a lift and I'm going to go scream at metal and throw a lot of iron around? Fine. Whatever it takes to take care of myself in those moments. So self-care is a big deal for me,
Mm.
especially because I turned 50 in November. I've got to start. I'm like you. I told my doctor the other day, I believe that we run until the battery runs out. There is no need for me to think about decline. I'm going to keep
Mm.
going up, that graph until one day the battery says, I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm hearing you there. And 50. Oh, that's child's play. I'm a bit older
I
than
wouldn't have
that.
guessed it, no.
I'm a grandma of 7, Reed. So you can imagine when I go out with the tribe. Yes, I'm nearly 52 if you're trying to work
I
out
wouldn't have
how
guessed
old
it.
I am. I had children when I was really young. Thanks. Okay. What's your favourite movie that features a person's inner strength
Oh,
to get up?
goodness gracious. Favorite movie that has to do with inner strength to give up or to get up? I watch so many movies. I have to think. So there's a movie called Vision Quest, and it was one of the movies I watched when I was an athlete. It
Yeah.
is about a wrestler who wants to win the state championship. So to do it, he loses a bunch of weight and drops down a weight class to take on a guy who has won 3 straight state championships, and they call him the Beast. And what happens is he falls in love. He has issues at home. So his world sort of changes, and it's not just the wrestling. And he has a couple of moments in the movie where he has to get up, but it's the whole idea that it's just him, and he talks about it, it's just him on the mat. Like, he has nobody to rely on. He's got no help out there when he's one-on-one with this guy who's won 3 state championships. So everything is up to him. And that's always been a big motivator movie, because we always have support. We never climb mountains alone, but there are times when there will be those moments where you have to draw upon yourself. You can't look to the stands. You can't look to a hand helping you. There are those quiet moments where it's on you to pick yourself up, because nobody else can at that moment. And I always like that movie because it talked about him being on a personal vision quest, and you could see the struggle the whole movie about how much he let people in versus how much he had to do it himself. And thank goodness I have a great support network. But when 2019 happened,
And that's the key, isn't
you
it?
should have that. But when I came out of the fog of 2019, it had to be me that had to make the decision to fix it.
And yeah, look, I think that's with anything. I mean, what's the old saying? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And, that's with anything. You can help someone try and lose weight, but if they're not into it, they don't want to lose weight, or they're not in that right mindset yet, then it's never going to happen. And I used to be a Weight Watchers leader and used to coach up to 500 people a week. And you'd get groups of friends that would come along, because one wanted to go and she didn't want to go by herself, so she'd, drag her girlfriends in there to go. And I could pick who was going to lose weight and who wasn't going to lose weight when they walked in through the door. That, those that had the mindset that they were there for the right reasons, and then the others that were just looking for magic. They'd come through the door and think that there was a big magic beam there, that just because they were coming to Weight Watchers meant that they were going to lose weight, but they weren't doing Weight Watchers. So there was a big difference. And that analogy I've used quite a lot. I'm in another program at the moment, and it involves 90-something videos that you've got to watch. And they're only about 3 minutes, so they don't take long out of your day. to do. I, smashed it out in a very short period of time, this course, and then it's group coaching in that as well. And there's people that have been in there for 6 months that still haven't opened and watched a video.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you want success in your life, you have to follow through with what you're doing. You're only doing a half-hearted job out of it, so you're only going to get half-hearted results in the end from it. So it just, some people just stagger me, they do, with that. Reid, what's a job or position that you've loved the best and why?
I love them all. I was a kindergarten teacher for 1 year. I've done some cool jobs. I've worked with homeless youth. I've worked with youth organizations. I've worked with college sailors. But this job, I loved the kids. At 5 years old, I had 50 kids, 25 in the morning, 25 in the afternoon. They had such amazing personalities. They told you it as it was. They still saw the world with joy. They had this curiosity that we lose as adults that just blew me away. And so that was one of my all-time favorite jobs, is because I knew that every day, no matter what, that I would say or do something, and I didn't even realize I was saying or doing it. It could be something totally mundane that was going to change a life of one of those kids, because they were at such a young, impressionable age. That's when all the neurons they're growing, or the brain is growing, and it's clipping neurons, and it's changing, and it's so malleable that I knew that every day I had the opportunity to really make a difference in these kids' lives. Whereas when you work with older adults, when you work with, or older kids, they're at a point now where maybe they've solidified certain habits, or they've stopped, quote unquote, growing in certain ways. And so you don't know how deep your impact is. But with 5-year-olds, I knew every day I had the opportunity to make deep, deep changes. And one of the big things it did for me is it made me very intentional about what I said and did, because they take everything literally. They read everything, not just what you say, but your facial expressions and your body language and what you value. And so it made me a much more intentional person, and they were such a joy to be around.
Oh, that's wonderful. Have you faced a time when you've been in survival mode, and how did you cope
I think
with that?
a lot of us were in survival mode for about 2 or 3 years there during the pandemic. And, survival mode, the problem with it is we don't think about thriving. We don't think about growth. In survival mode, we think about getting to the other side. We think about just making it through. And so we have uncertain language. And when your language isn't certain, your outcomes aren't. So a lot of us were like, well, if this happens, if we go back to that. And so I think for the last couple of years, being in survival mode really wore a lot of us down. With a lot of toxic chemicals being released in our body because of the stress and all of that, and just the lack of social interactions with people and the uncertainty in our world. How I dealt with it was, again, I went back to having as much of a routine as I could, burying myself in my pod of people that we had, my family, those of us who were together and staying together, and trying to enrich my days however I could. If I couldn't go out, that's fine. Then we're going to join masterclass, and we'll watch all the masterclass videos, and we'll learn to cook. Or if I couldn't go and speak to organizations, then I'll try to set up webinars so I'm still engaging with people. And so and the big one was, my wife and I talked a lot about, we made a lot of unhealthy choices. I think we all did during the pandemic. But as we were coming out of it, one of the things we talked about is, okay, we've got to shift out of this survival mindset, get out of the fear center of our brain, stop using the amygdala, and start thinking about how do I thrive? How do I use what happened to me in the last 2 years to grow? What can I do now so I can shift that mindset to one of a thriving mindset? And that's that. It was tough, but my wife, again, I've got a great partner in my wife. I've got great partners in my kids. And so we just held each other accountable every day for what are we doing to get past feeling like we're just surviving, and that we're actually, moving forward again in our lives, and not letting the pandemic keep us down.
Yeah. What guides you to find purpose and direction?
My kids. I look at my kids. I look at the life they're living. I look at what they've been through. I look at the guidance that I got from my mentors, and I realize, what comes out of me is, I've said before, echoes, from the generations prior to me who taught it to me. And I look at my kids and I tell them all the time, you're the generation that can fix this. My generation missed it. Or my generation didn't get it done. Your generation can get it done. And that
Yeah.
drives me, because there's still an opportunity for us, quote unquote, old dogs who think, oh, there's nothing left we can do. It's in their hands now. That fatalistic view, like I'm old enough that I don't make a difference. No, we need to pour into that next generation. That
No, that's
if
not
we
right.
give that next generation the tools
Yeah,
they
that's
need,
right.
they can be better than we were. And that means the world's better. And so my kids really drive me.
Oh, that's great. I've just written an
Oh,
illustrated children's book. I published it last year on equality and inclusion, and particularly, for my grandchildren, that generation that's now coming through, which I don't even know what they call that generation now. I mean, what are we? We're Y, and I had X's, so I don't know where we're up to in the alphabet. But it was, I wrote that for them, hoping that when they get to our age, that the world is a much nicer place, that, we treat everyone the same and with respect, despite their colour, race or gender. So I'm all about, the minds of the younger ones and how impressionable and that they are, and educating for the better, not for the worse. So, Reed, if you could go back to your 18-year-old self, what's one piece of advice you would give yourself?
moments of joy only. When I was younger, I
Okay.
was a very intense human being, and I took a lot of things very personally. And I think a lot of times the mind is drawn to the
Yeah.
negative. It's a primitive safety feature, but we tend to latch on to the negative. And I was one of those people who just let the negative sort of eat me alive instead of just enjoying things. And I look back on
Yeah.
some of the things I did as a younger person. I'm like, wow, what a cool experience. And I don't even think I enjoyed it at the time. And so I talk about mojo with my kids. Mojo, moments of joy only. I would go back and tell my 8-year-old, man, enjoy the ride. It's going to suck at times. Embrace the suck. It's going to be amazing at times. Make sure you
Mm.
celebrate the amazing, but more importantly, just like, don't take it too seriously, man. There's always a way out the other side. And in the end,
Yeah.
you're going to look back, and no matter what you've been through, you're going to look back fondly on it. Because if you come out on the other side and you learn from it, even the bad experiences, they end up being something you're grateful for having. And I just didn't understand that until I'm 49.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally understand that one. What are a couple of books you'd recommend to my audience, and
So if you're a
why?
big fan of mindset, Carol Dweck, huge fan of Carol Dweck. If you like the idea of connecting the neurons to it, I love Daniel Coyle's Talent Code, and then he's got the Culture Code. Uh, the Talent Code is really cool because you start to understand intentionality and practice and skill development, and you start to really understand that skill happens in the brain. And so again, how are we speak lead? How are we speaking to ourselves in skill from in moments when we're trying to master a skill? There is a book by James Kerr called Legacy that talks about the New Zealand All Blacks. And one of the reasons I love it is he talks about the 15 immutable rules that they
Yeah.
have. Those are rules for life. No jerks, follow the spearhead, leave a legacy, which is, plant trees that you'll never see, that concept that you're creating a world that's better for the next generation. So
Mm.
one of the things that I love about, and it's not just them, there's a lot of rugby teams around the world that have bought into that, creating that culture of excellence. And so that book I'm a big fan of. Those would probably be the big ones on my bookshelf. Who else? Carmine Gallo, Talk Like Ted, one of my favorite books all time, because yes, I used it before I did a TEDx talk. And so it really taught me how to structure a talk. I reached out to him and said, Carmine, my talk is your book, like in practice. And he writes me back and goes, oh my gosh, I watched it. It's literally my book. Like, you did everything I said, but it's made me a better thinker about how I'm going to present to people, how I want to present my ideas to the people around me, how I want to communicate better. And so it's a fantastic book for helping
Mm.
you with your communication skills. And he's a top-notch communicator. So those would be some of the ones that I recommend. There's another one out there called,
Awesome.
I'm going to blank on the name, Weeds. It's about growing your business, by Stu Heinecke. And he's a cartoonist, a former cartoon. He still does cartoons, but he's a great writer, and he talks about how to grow your
Yep.
business like a weed. And he studied weeds and how resilient they are and how tough they are and how prevalent they are. And he said, and he found some parallels between that and business. So those are probably some books I'd recommend.
Isn't it amazing? Like,
Yeah.
what makes a weed a weed?
Yeah.
Why is it a weed? Why is it not a plant? Isn't it a plant anyway? Like, To me, I've got weeds in my front garden because they're absolutely
Yeah.
beautiful flowers on them, but they're known as, a weed. And so I've always wondered about that.
Yeah,
Like, what makes a weed a weed? Who decided that, pardon me, that was going to be a weed and that one's going to be a plant?
I agree. Oh, I would
Makes no
recommend one more
sense to
book
me.
because we were talking about generations.
Okay.
There's a book out there by a friend of mine by the name of Megan Gerhardt, and it's called Gintelligence, and it's about how to create a workplace that deals with the multiple generations and how to manage other. Like you were talking about, I'm an Xer, so my kids are millennials, and then there's Zs and all. So how do I create an environment where I can actually work with all of the different generations more successfully? It's a really good book.
Oh, I have to have a read of that one.
Oh, there you go.
I've got two kids that are X's.
They're wise. We're the X.
Oh, no, they're wise. I'm an X. Yeah, too wise. So I'm wondering why I had wise all the time. So let's get a couple of quirky questions out of the way. What's one question you wish I'd asked you, and how would you have answered?
I've never had. That's a good one. Oh boy. Probably. Did I learn more in school or did I learn more in life? And the answer is I learned way more in life. I think school set me up to be analytical. It set me up to research. It set me up to work through problems, work the problems, but life is where I really put it in context. And a lot of times I talk to a lot of coaches. I talk about putting theory into practice, and school gave me the ability to theorize, but life gave me the ability to put it into practice and find out what really works and what really doesn't work.
Yeah, I like that. What was your favorite subject at school, right?
No, psychology. I got really into sociology,
oh, really?
psychology, even a little bit of philosophy. I've always been mesmerized by how the brain works and how people think. And even as a young kid, I always wondered, is the color blue that I see the same color that somebody else is visualizing in their brain? And I always want to know what makes people tick. Like, why do they think the way they think, and why do they do the things they do?
Now, isn't that amazing that the universe has actually pulled you back into that role in your adulthood? So, you went off on the path of as an athlete, but the universe has pulled you back into that psychology role.
Yeah.
Whether you realized it or not.
That was my problem. My dad would make bets with his assistant coaches because he coached me for a while, and I'd make a mistake and it'd be the second minute of the game. And, at halftime at the 40th minute of the game, I'd come off and go, can you believe what I did? And blah, and he'd go, you owe me $5 to his assistant coach. Because he'd say, I'll bet you that's the first thing he says when he comes off the field. I always got it in my own head. And so psychology with the athletes I work with or the coaches I work with has always mattered to me because I knew I struggled with it.
Yeah. Okay, now we're going to get into some really quirky questions here, Reid. Do you like pineapple on pizza? Yes or no?
Make a lot of people mad, but yes.
Yay!
They make there's some really good pizzerias here in San Diego that have great pineapple pizza. So yes. I'll do pineapple.
Yeah, I'm a pineapple on pizza girl as well. I'm lactose intolerant, so I'll take your word on that one.
Yeah, you wouldn't want it then.
No. I love cheese. It just doesn't love me. Okay, so tea, coffee, hot chocolate, or wine?
Coffee first.
I knew you were going to say that when I said it. I thought bourbon. He's not going to say any of these.
Coffee first, and then that would be yeah. And
how do you have your coffee?
My wife's a wine person. I'm a whiskey guy. Black.
How do you have your coffee?
Usually a ristretto, or I'll do just a shot of espresso. I just like whiskey. I like to taste the flavor, so I'll get a really good espresso and try to taste the chocolate in it or the floral notes. Or I never can. I always taste it my way. I say things like, "Oh, it tastes like a whatchamacallit," or I never do get the flavors right, but they're my flavors.
I haven't had a cup of coffee in 31 years, right? So I'll take your advice. I'm allergic to caffeine, so Nothing that has caffeine in it. No tea, coffee, chocolate, tiramisu. I've never had a Red Bull or one of those caffeinated drinks.
It does more than
what
gives you
they
wings
taste
anyway.
like,
You don't want to
so.
drink too much of that. I drank a lot of that in my 20s. So.
And, people say to me, how do you get out of bed? I couldn't survive without my cup of coffee every morning.
Yep.
And I'm like, yeah, bullshit. Yeah, yeah, you can. You're just telling yourself
Exactly.
a false belief all the time. You can, because I'm living proof that you can. I can't even go in a room that's got a lot of coffee smell in it, because that'll give me a migraine. Yeah. That's how sensitive I am to it all. Okay, your favorite food?
Right. I would have to say steak. I'm a steak guy. I love a really good, rare to medium rare or smoked. I'll smoke meat all weekend if I can. So that I'd have to lean steak.
Nice. I'm coming to visit. I'm such a carnivore. Yeah, I'm such a carnivore. When just a quick story, when my kids were in high school, my son was in high school, he made friends with this young kid who was vegetarian, and so this kid turns around to Zach and goes, "Oh, we're vegetarian," and I'm vegetarian, and Zach goes, "Don't come to our place then." And this young guy's like, "Oh, why?" And he goes, "Because we're carnivores." So, here's his 13-year-old kid going, "No, we're carnivores. You can't come to our house.
Gosh.
We won't have anything to feed you." Yeah, we do like a bit of meat in our house. Okay. What's your favorite music?
It depends on the mood. I will go a lot around mood-wise, but I'm really into jazz right now. I've got a record player in my office, and I'll put on some, and more of the new funky jazz, like some of the more modern jazz I'll get into. And then if I'm working, I'll put in Brain FM. I absolutely love that app. So it's more like it's synth music and neurologically stimulating music. My wife and I living out here,
I'm going to have to listen to that.
It's got sleep mode, it's got meditate mode, it's got relax mode, it's got focus mode. You can alter the neurological impact. Like my wife's very ADD. My son is, I'm pretty certain I am. So I put it high level. So it really helps manage my, the distractions. And then my wife and I both I was very much into Dave Matthews for a very long time, that kind of music. Now we listen to a lot of like, reggae type, beach surf music, so there's a lot of, we live in San Diego, so we listen to a lot of surf type music, a little bit more laid back, nice beat to it. So yeah, I'm all over the board.
Yeah, me too. I have a large range that I listen to, and one of my passions is always seeing live music. I love going out and seeing live music, and I've seen most of the big bands out there. The year before COVID, so 2019, I saw 15 major acts that came to Australia. I was, every couple of weeks or so, I was off to Melbourne and to see such and such a band and such a band. And some of them I'd see 2 times in the same tour because at different venues, because I just love live music. I love the atmosphere. Everything's so positive, and I've seen some exceptional musicians in my time, some that are no longer with us, unfortunately. So, Reid, where can my listeners find you online?
At Coach_Reid on most of them, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. You can find me, Ray's Excellence, on Facebook is my Facebook page. And then you can go to CoachReid.com, and Reid is spelled REED. And and I also have a website called FullSpartan.com, Full Spartan, and it's for my upcoming book. And I took a 2 or 3 year hiatus from the online world. I'm back in now. I'm a little bit more engaged. So if people do ping me online, I will talk to you, because it's good to be back and sharing with other people.
It's good to have you back. So on that note, thank you so much for being on the Resilience Mindset
Thank you. I
podcast
really enjoyed
today.
this conversation.
Awesome. And remember, listeners, you know the drill. Until next time, stay resilient.
Building resilience is a key life skill, a skill everyone needs to work at consistently. Life can throw us curveballs, from sickness to job loss, death and no purpose, but it's our inner strength to get back up, navigate the journey of change, and build ourselves back up. If you'd like a free 30-minute one-on-one conversation with resilience coach Justine Martin, email yes please to hello@justinemartin.com.au. We hope you enjoyed the Resilience Mindset podcast. Remember to subscribe to the podcast to get your weekly fix listening to Resilience Queen Justine Martin. Follow Justine on social media at Resilience Mindset or log on to justinemartin.com.au. And until next time, remember, life doesn't get easier or more forgiving. We get stronger and more resilient.